shall just dive in. My name is Ray. I will be your moderator for today's panel. We'll just go straight into introductions and then start. So I will do it in a way that I can see you, how you're chronologically looking in front of me. So we'll start with Ivy.
Hi, my name is Ivy Werimba. I am currently working with GALC, the Gay and Lesbian Coalition of Kenya, as the communication and advocacy officer. My pronouns are she, her. I live in Nairobi, and I'm very excited to be here.
Hey, thank you, Ivy. Lucinda?
My name is Lucinda Wessels. I am from Horen, kind of Amsterdam. I am a dancer, choreographer. I'm a maker also. I try to make multidisciplinary art. So crossovers, and I DJ. Yeah.
Cool.
And yeah, for now that's good. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll get deeper into what people are doing as we continue. And Coco.
Hey, I'm Coco. I'm DJ alias Rosie Parade. I'm using they and them pronouns. I'm here today representing Pussy Party. Pussy Party is an incubator for women and queer DJs, and we're in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Great, nice to meet you all. So the panel today is entitled Alternative and Emerging Party and Event Scenes. So sober partying, digital experiences, and daytime festivals. Oh, a lot of words. And so we'll just jump into it, and I think we'll just go like, if you feel you have the answer, let's go for it, and then let's try not to talk over each other. We're just four, so we'll be fine. So we'll just go straight into question one, like, what do you think partying does for communities, especially smaller marginalized communities?
I mean, it brings them together, and normally that's like a curated safe space, you know, to can be in whatever kind of group that is. You can just connect on a base that, you know, that you resonate. And I think it's very important to feel a certain purpose or something, that it's okay, that where you're at. And also I think dancing is really good for releasing tension in the body. And yeah, I think that, you know, the party hosts that space to feel free and to move. I think that's very a healthy way of coming together also, and feeling like empathy for each other, you know, seeing that. Yeah,
I agree. For me, the words that would come up would be feeling safe. You want to be around people who you feel safe with. And that's because you haven't found a place where you can fully express yourself. And another thing, again, I totally agree with the dancing thing. It's healing to just be in a place where you can fully express whoever you are, like your internal self is very important. Also, I feel like they create like a sense of utopia. Like, this is what an inclusive sort of like space and world would feel like. And for maybe a few hours, for like 3 days, whatever, it's beautiful to be in such a space.
Yeah, I agree. Dancing, really important. And I think it's that envisioning of a utopia. You know, as feminine people in South Africa, it's hard for us to imagine what our freedom looks like. Sometimes when people haven't been to Pussy Party, they can't really understand what the hype is about. And when they've come into the space, there's something that we didn't know existed, which we can create together. I think kind of social engagements to give us a chance to try again in terms of how we want to engage and interact. And you know, something Pussy Party does, we do host exclusive events. We also host events that are more open, where we're going into spaces that are being used on a daily by all kinds of people. And that also gives people from outside of our communities an opportunity to imagine and to understand, oh, hold on, what's all the fuss about? You know, what are these problems that women and queer people are talking about in spaces? How does it look actually when women and queer people feel free at an event space, at a party? There's a lot of
I think we lost you in the last part. You said there's a lot of something, and you were like, yes, we were getting into it.
a lot of learning. I think there's a lot of learning that we can do when we share those experiences in real life, in real time.
Right. And Coco, I'll just go back to you and say, like, when you were imagining Pussy Party, when you start, because I'm assuming you're one of the founders, did you think that was community an important thing, like when you were first starting, or was it around like just safety, and community came because of that?
You know, when we started, our focus was really just around DJs. How are we going to get more hands behind the decks? And it's only as we got into it, you know, a couple of months into a monthly event, that we realized it's not just access and opportunity that stops hands from getting behind the decks, it's also the entire club environment. If you can't feel safe walking from the door to the booth, how are you going to feel safe inside the booth? If you don't see parties that you want to DJ, if you only see parties in a certain way as an unwelcoming, unfriendly, unsafe space, you're never going to think that you want to be a DJ. A lot of people come to Pussy Party as patrons, and only after a couple of events they realize, actually, I do want to be behind the decks. I do have something to share musically in party spaces.
Okay, thank you. Lucinda, I think there's, from what I've seen, I'm not a dancer. Sorry, Coco. I always try to shake.
I think, let me change my internet. I feel okay, I think I'm back. Hopefully this is better.
All right. Let's fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Anyway, Lucinda, I think because what I've seen, there's like a lot of community built around dancing. Could you maybe tell us your experience around that?
Yeah, there is a lot of like battle scene, you know, where it's like kind of a party, but they also there's this dance competition where there is really the attention for the dancer. It can be in several styles. I think what is upcoming now is really like the ballroom scene that's getting, it's really small, but because I know a lot of dancers, I see it grows. And I think that's really nice because I feel like there the attention is really about the people that are participating in walking or dancing, and the whole crowd, you know, is like centered towards that person, and it's really an empowering kind of environment to walk or dance, you know, the character, the dream that you want to be. And they work super hard. They like go off in those kind of cyphers. It's really nice to see that. And I feel like that's also where we find the urge to share it, or the people that I know that are interested in organizing. It's like, okay, dance can already get you to a place if you allow it, you know. That can be very freeing. And I also got inspired to organize an event that is focused on dancing, not so much in a competition way, more like for people that want to feel free and dancing in their own way, and also not have the alcohol and actually around that, because sometimes it can kind of have no boundaries anymore, you know. So that's where the line of safety is sometimes felt not so safe. So we created like a sober party with one dancer also on the dance floor, kind of giving instructions, but really like an MC kind of playful way. So not so much like follow me, but more like concepts, and everybody was like dancing. And I think this was a really nice way to get people more comfortable in how they can play with their own body, with different emotions, but in a club kind of setting, you know, not so much in like performing or a competition. So I think just having there's this word in Dutch, it's called drempel, but it's like the first step, you know, to make it lower, for people to experience that dancing can also have this kind of way of ecstasy, you know, when it flows in the body. And some people, they use drinking to get to that place also. But I think it's nice to stimulate more of a sense of that it's all in us already. We just don't know always how to access it. That's why we use, you know, to stimulate things from outside. But I think that's just that's what motivates me as a dancer, to kind of build that bridge more towards the people that don't say they're a dancer. For example, I am like, we are. We all are.
We all are dancers. Okay.
Can I say something?
Of course.
I honestly like what Coco mentioned about clubbing and creating a space where these DJs were trying to find a place to sort of like, if I don't want to perform there, what other space can I come up with to sort of do this? And I totally relate because, okay, me, I'm coming from the party goer side, and that's what I felt when I saw Strictly Still coming out. It had been to queer parties, I'd been to like straight clubs, straight events, or heterosexual. Most of the people who I knew were there were mostly heterosexual. But then the feeling that I got at Strictly Silk was, first of all, it was the kind of music that I listened to. And I was listening to that kind of music with people who I could totally be myself with, in a way that hadn't happened before. And yeah, like, I feel like we usually forget, or in this country, we forget that there are subcultures, and within these subcultures, there's no enough, I don't know, like spaces for people to explore what I feel something, and I don't have like a group of people to sort of like exercise this with. And yeah, that kind of sucks because it's very limiting. You kind of have like all of these things going on inside you, but you don't exactly have community to share it with. And Strictly Silk was really beautiful in that, or it is really beautiful in that sense, because you get a space to sort of, you know, explore a part of yourself.
That's good, and it's good that you mentioned countries, because the next question is, do cities have different party atmosphere? And what is your city known for? And this is like assuming that at least we've got representation from different places, yeah? And so it would be good to know, what is your city known for in terms of atmosphere? Let's go, Coco.
I think I feel like everyone at the moment knows what South African parties look like. People know what parties in Johannesburg look like, this rise and rise of piano, um, and however hype it seems from the outside, it's even more hype inside. So I think some of the things we're known for, dancing, people dancing really well, getting really free on the dance floor. And you know, the other, like an iconic symbol that came to my mind was this cider, this alcoholic cider called Savannah, which is like so deeply loved and so like broadly consumed. And you know, the dancing in the savannah kind of start going hand in hand, and there's dances around the savannah bottles. Another, you know, another interesting thing about Joburg, about some of the cities in South Africa, for me, is deep house culture. So South Africa's got this really rich and complicated relationship with house music, and deep house in particular, in some ways is a very masculine space and a very masculine concern. But there's this very beautiful thing that happens with men and masculine people in spaces which are really focused on deep house culture and focused on that music. These become spaces with a lot of love and a lot of tenderness, a lot of physical contact. These are some of the few spaces where you'll see straight cisgender South African men holding hands, holding each other, really like bonding. So I think our party scene is very deeply related to music, very deeply related to dance, and that is something that we leverage, you know, in terms of ways of communicating and ways of imagining new things. You know, that connection is not cerebral, that connection is lived. And sometimes it's much easier to spread a message when you're talking to the body and the soul a little bit less than the mind and language.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, and I've seen the deep house because I play deep houses also, and I know that feeling. I know what it does to the soul. It's heavenly. How does it look, Lucinda? The atmosphere. What is the
In
atmosphere?
Amsterdam, yeah, I think for what I've known, I think Amsterdam is quite casual how we go out. I feel like how I experienced the dancing could be more. There is a lot of social, like bars and drinking and talking. But I do think on a general base, we could shake it up a little bit more. I think festivals like Amsterdam Dance Event, they do that because they're big, and there's really like a great program on electronic music. It's very international also. That's why I think there is still a way of holding that scene a little bit more, instead of having it 1 year and we go full out, you know, to have a little bit more of a routine. But yeah, obviously there's COVID, so now it's been just nothing. But then, and we have like the Reguliersdwarsstraat, which is like the gay street. And I think we are known for to be like, that street was always quite famous, very welcoming. I think the gay scene is growing in different places now. So Amsterdam is maybe not so much the place to be, but I think we were quite early with accepting, also with the marriage and stuff. But now I think we could kind of explore that again. And like I said, like I see the ballroom scene a little bit growing, but I don't see them having access to the right spaces to continue kind of this movement that is happening. So yeah, that's how I feel like Amsterdam is known for now. I think there's many more subcultures and genres going on where I'm not so much exploring in. Like, we are very multicultural. We have very diverse kind of cultures and ideas. So yeah, I don't see everything, but I know that there is place in Holland to do so many different things, for sure.
Strange one, Nairobi.
I totally agree with the sentiment, that the last sentiment from Lucinda, like not being able to explore all the spaces. I also feel that deeply because like most of the spaces in Nairobi, I not generally my vibe because and I say this like I don't want to receive hate from like Kenyans. I'm saying this because they're mostly the spaces that I've explored have mostly been heterosexual, where you're dancing, everyone is drinking. There's like a lot of like importance that usually is placed on like drinking and just whining on one another, or just a man showing up behind you and starting this like stop doing that. I'm like, I wasn't here for this. So that has kind of made me sort of like move back from a lot of the spaces. And therefore it has, because now I can't talk about the Nairobi scene because that's my understanding or my perception of what the Nairobi scene looks like. And therefore it has led me down this path where I'm like more intentional about the kind of spaces that I want to exist in. And so thinking back to like a conversation I was having with a friend like several years back, she was visiting the country, and I remember she was asking me, okay, so where do you usually go to in Nairobi? Because like I haven't found, like since I came, I haven't found a place where I can just go drink and eat and just that would be just fine for me. And I remember thinking, I have never thought about it like that, first of all. And second, like I accepted it as a challenge to try and find alternative spaces because again, going back to whatever Lucinda was saying about sober parties or parties where like the insistence is not on getting high and just like losing your mind. I'm not saying that people usually lose their mind, but when everyone is just like high on something, like there's more room for error. And so yeah, like that's kind of like the spaces, those are the kind of spaces that I have found myself gravitating towards, where I'd like to see more spaces where I can just sit. I'm not saying that I do drink, like, but not so that it's like I already know that I have like a life inside of me that I'd like to share with people around me, but it's also not dependent on drugs. Yeah.
Okay. So basically what Ivy is saying and not saying because of your opinions on the internet is that the Nairobi atmosphere is drinking. Like the clubs are made for drinking. Even as a DJ, when you go to play, they don't care particularly. Most places will not tell you, will not talk about music. Yeah, they also talk about sales. So that's the atmosphere that you're going in as a DJ, saying, who are you bringing? How many people can you bring? What will they buy? Will I make sales? And that leads me to a question around just rethinking party scenes and offering, right? I think what has been lost, what has been missing, what is emerging as an active DJ who's going to places, trying to look for gigs, having to open my own, being pushed to open something like Pleasure House, what we did many years ago, because people are not there for the music, they're there for, I don't know, what do you think should change and what do you think has been lost and what do you think is emerging? I like that with Lucinda, already what's emerging is a ballroom scene. So maybe you could take over from what more you'd like to see and what is missing.
Yeah, actually, what Ivy is saying, like I feel like for me, there's a desire to kind of explore those alternative parties or the different settings, like different locations. There's actually the House of Vineyard, which is like the voguing ballroom house of Amsterdam right now. They are doing like this dinner show, you know, where they have like this whole performance, and it was kind of because of COVID that people could sit in the club. They put all the tables, they had like dinner going on. But it used to be a club, but now they transformed it in this like dinner party because everybody had to be seated, and the show is just actually kind of happening around you and on a stage, which maybe wouldn't happen so fast if COVID was not there. But now the concept is out and it's already running for 2 years. I think they're doing great. Then yeah, also just different locations for sure. Let me check out. Yeah, and I feel like so kind of the idea or what is like the intention to party sometimes get lost when we cross this kind of border of how to feel safe, you know, how am I still kind of responsible for myself and others. Like if these things kind of get blurred by just being too crowded, you know, like hosting too many people, probably for commercialized reasons, you know, then the sense of why we come together is kind of lost. And I have this sense for a certain spirituality with that's, you know, within the dancing, that it connects in a way, if we put the attention on the people instead of on just the DJ. Or it's kind of, that's why I like these competitions kind of ideas, because they host that environment. But it could be nice if that is something that we can access together, like how people used to in hip hop, you know, create ciphers, which is like the little circle. When someone goes in, they share what they have to say with their bodies. And there is this kind of, it happens organically to just express, you know. I feel like sometimes now I can walk in a club and feel like there's just zombies. Like we cannot even, it's so cramped that we cannot even have that connection with each other or find space to be a little bit more free. So yeah, I feel like that's something we can rethink. Is it safe to host that many people, you know, like there's in this more concert kind of situation, but there's more news of people dying in concerts just because it's so crowded, like people get walked over. And that's like, you know, I feel like that's something that cannot happen. Like it's really something we should be more thoughtful about. Just having masses for commercialized reason is not for me the motivation to, you know, continue.
I like that, like more people focus, less money focus, although even granted that we live in a place that money has to. Money is what gives us sometimes these actual spaces. It's very interesting to have, even whilst you're still dealing with capitalism, the focus is still on the people first. And I'm sure there's ways, like if we can think beyond capitalism, I'm sure we can think of people. So anything else, maybe Coco, that is emerging in Joburg, and or what has been lost, or maybe there was something like before during the quieter days.
So you know, when my esteemed colleague was talking about sit-down events, that doesn't work here. Doesn't matter if there's tables and chairs, doesn't matter if the music's soft, people are going to dance, people are going to get up and dance, people want to be in motion, people want to come close to each other. That's just like a very strong historical embedded way that people are together, that no rule could stop. So I think they've just announced a new COVID variant that they found in SA and somewhere else. Lockdown restrictions. We're still sitting with a curfew, but most places flat the curfew. A lot of people were partying through even our hard lockdown. This was coming from 2019 summer of emergence of pianos. I was at a party when our president announced lockdown. And we're coming into another wave now, and there's not enough vaccinated people, and there's just a whole nother, there's this wave of grief that we're about to walk into again. Anyway, that's that on that. So I think, things that are emerging, Pussy Party started in 2016. At that point, there were dedicated gay spaces, like masculine, cisgender gay spaces, which I think historically is, well known. But there weren't really queer and feminine focused spaces. And in the time since Pussy Party has been around, we've really been churning out DJs. At the same time, we've been doing a lot of mentorship for DJs and partygoers who want to start their own events. And the Joburg queer scene at the moment is just so beautiful and so lush and so diverse. Just about every weekend, you can go to a queer event, to a femme-focused event. It's not unusual to see all women and all queer lineups, even at typically heterosexual cisgender spaces. It's very standard to have quite a lot of hands on a lineup, even the most even if they put all of us early and then by 10 o'clock it's still Dick Central. There's just this beautiful emergence. My colleagues, Same Sex Saturday, they started in Durban around the same time as Pussy Party. And Andy, the founder, moved to Joburg sort of beginning of 2019, and Same Sex Saturday has just been doing incredible work in Joburg. They recently had a 3-day festival event outdoor called Queertopia, it was just last weekend, and it was such a beautiful space and such a beautiful experience. They were very articulate and deliberate about their agenda, and pushing the idea that it's important to self-define, and our labels are very important for self-definition, but the next step is not boxing ourselves and not boxing others, and remembering that we're humans first, and allowing space for different kinds of humans to explore what it is to be queer and what it is to have a queered concept of space. So I think Joburg is doing really well at the moment. I see Cape Town is also starting to push up. Spaces and venues is an ongoing problem, but I really see so much hope for Joburg and for South Africa at the moment in terms of different kinds of ways of being in club spaces, ways of being together that are maybe not necessarily club spaces.
Ivy, have you found anything on your mission to find something different? This is a couple of years now, they've passed. What did you find? What are you finding?
What am I finding?
Because outside of because did you find anything that is interesting that you're able to go to without and feel free to express.
First of all, it's just amazing to hear what's happening in Amsterdam, what's happening in Joburg, Cape Town. Like, it just sounds like it's over there.
Queertopia.
Right, Queertopia. I was following the conversations. There's I forgot his name, but he has a YouTube page and he was like going on and on and on and on about Queertopia, and therefore like I was seeing like whatever was happening in SA, and so it's exciting to see what's happening in other African countries, because in our country, or okay, in my country, I feel like the reimagination is just happening right now. Like now is when like people are figuring out, oh wait, people don't just listen to raga and reggae and dancehall music alone. There's like this whole crew of people who like R&B music, and we can try and create spaces like this. And there are other alternative clubs that are coming up, like the Alchemist or Ruama Africa, that are providing spaces for queer people. And that's something new. It's just, to me, it's the ideas, like they're still bubbling, and therefore like it feels like I am living in a very exciting time, because more and more people are more confident to push for whatever it is that they want to see happening. And yeah, like that's all I have to say, because in my explorations, it's still very like I'm still trying to figure out, okay, what do I like? As I was saying, like I'm very intentional about the spaces that I go to, and it's, do I like that artist? No, then I'm staying home. Like I don't mind staying home and just watching some queer show, like that's cool, because I don't want to have to go and deal with music that I don't like with just a lot of people, and like yeah.
I will tend to agree with Ivy. I think for Kenya it's now emerging, still in the baby steps that people were in maybe 4, 5, 7 years ago. And it's good to see that these things are coming up as well. It's good to see that a few Kenyans are coming up and saying, yo, it's okay to be different, it's okay to do this differently, it's okay, and to realize that no idea is original. And for your idea not to be original, but there's some elements of it that could be very specific to you and very original to you. And that brings me to, like, I saw earlier last week and earlier this week, I think it happened yesterday, after a long time of not having Strictly Silk, I was just on Twitter streets and I was like, oh, Mercury is doing a ladies night, and they're borrowing elements from what we had at Strictly Silk in terms of not the audience per se, but the service providers will be female. And it was good to see. Mercury is very mainstream club, and it was good for me to actually see this happening. Like, okay, that's a step. That's a step that they've done in this way that that will make maybe the girls and maybe someone who would not probably go out on a Wednesday night to Mercury specifically think about, maybe I should go out. Maybe I miss SS so much that this is something I might be interested in, and that's cool. And thinking around that, so I'm just trying to figure, the next question is around who has gained the most from gatherings that center people of marginalized gender, and who has lost the most. Anyone can jump in.
So this question, I'm not sure if I'm answering it directly, but what that brought to mind for me is what was happening at Queertopia. So many of us have taken a long time to come into our identities as queer people. There are so many people who are still on the long journey of self-acceptance, self-understanding, who 5, 10, 1 year down the line might say, I am queer. What Queertopia pushed was a lack of having to self-identify. Sometimes when we host queer spaces, we exclude people who are questioning or people who are uncomfortable and unsafe to self-identify. And And as we can slowly find ways to protect ourselves, which is really important, but also open up the minds of others around us who may be going through some of the same internal struggles that we went through.
I also feel like another part of the same conversation is, while we are creating inclusive spaces, there's sort of like an underlying fear of doing the wrong thing, because there's so many different identities and there are so many different ways to talk about queerness. There is a fear that I feel like we all just are treading, it's like we're walking on eggshells when we're talking about queerness. And like, let me give an example. Like, I exist in this world as a lesbian cisgender woman, and therefore within the minority space, if it's a woman's party, Strictly Silk, for example, I stand to benefit more than someone who is, for example, a non-binary AMAB. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but someone who is non-conforming, but they want to attend this space. But then because of how their exterior looks like, then it would probably be difficult for them to enter such a space. So I really, I think I'm just opening it up for like a conversation, because I'm also trying to like figure out a way to have these conversations without feeling like I am going to step on someone's toes. And that's the fear that I'm talking about. Like, if
Remember,
what happened
on this panel, you're free to step. For the first
No.
time,
No. I'm not saying that. I'm not in this panel. I feel safe enough to have this conversation with the three of you. My thing is, what happens if I want to tweet about something that I saw that was happening, because that opens up that opens me up to more people, and maybe like with all the research that I have done, with every space that I have attended, I have seen and I have sort of like formed my own opinions about how I would like to navigate the world, where like I also recognize my privileges as a cisgender woman. So I don't know if there's a question inside there, but it's an observation that I'd honestly like for us as queer people to even have more of, where like while we are all trying to figure out like how queerness is evolving, can we also make room for ourselves to also make mistakes?
I think what I would want to talk back to, what that makes me think of, is that there's accepted language which is always changing and evolving, and in some ways it exists a lot online, from my perspective, and it's like, oh, you'd said, is this the right way to say it? Non-binary being spelt as ENBY, not NB, and it's queer, and in a way, especially in a situation where English is not the mother tongue, language can become exclusionary. And how do we navigate, how do we create language which is more open, and how do we communicate in ways that are non-verbal also?
And also, like, I feel like language is also limiting in its own way. I feel like it's, if language was a person right now, they'd be having like a really hard time keeping up with everything that's happening at the moment. But it's also to understand that, like, my request is, my experiences and my privileges limit just how much I know. Like, I honestly have to get out, like put in the time, and hopefully just like not lean on the fear. It's I want to understand and I want to know, and therefore I'll ask these questions and I'll go in there with I just need to understand what's going on. So yeah, like I feel like language can be limiting, and also like the fear of having this conversation is even more so limiting because because I don't know what I'm supposed to say, how I'm supposed to say it, then therefore let me just sit and be ignorant.
I think what I'm hearing is that this question is very layered. And even if you peeled all the layers, you'll still not come to an answer that is concrete. And that is good because then it keeps us thinking and keeps us going around like personal experiences. Like for myself, I would say, as Miss Ray, the DJ, the spaces I've gained so much from these spaces because for once you're going to play for the music, not about how you look like. Oh, female DJs are supposed to be sexy in the patriarchal sexy way. I don't have that pressure. I don't have the pressure for you must sell an X amount of money. It's so for me it's been very liberating in that sense. So I think that and also one of another female DJ that I know, DJs, let's just play with DJs. Anyway, another DJ that I know, we're not self-labeling. That I know has also mentioned how freeing, like just playing at Strictly Silk, for example, has been for her. Ivy, for example, in terms of just a chance to explore your music and share this music with the people that are present without thinking about other things that other spaces can limit actively or inactively. So I think it's one of those things that it's like a pendulum, it swings and it will not stop swinging at all. So I think moving on, we've spoken about sober parties, and the next question is about that. Like parties have been a place for people to seek additional enjoyment and sensory experience through chemical means, for example, drugs, which can be freeing for some but dangerous and illegal. Do you think? I mean, of course, Lucinda doesn't think that, but maybe she can speak more on that. Do you think that partying must include drugs as part of the experience? Because there are some people who would swear down right now that they must get high to dance. So, in your experience, because you've created sober party, what do you have to say?
Well, in this case, I don't think it's either or. I just feel like we should balance ourselves a little bit more. And if we want to party every day, I think we should do it in a more, kind of awareness towards our health, towards our body. And then I feel like the sober party can take a really nice place. What I also see emerging now, maybe also because of COVID, is kind of like booty workouts or fitness kind of related workouts that have a DJ or that do it outside or in different kind of ways. So in the evening hours, you can still have that energy of like a party that would go on for 5 hours, but you just put all the energy in 1 hour, do it sober, and kind of had your evening. So I do think the evening hours are a really good slot to kind of experiment those things in. And I do think there will be people, including myself, that also want to go out late at night, and kind of do drinking or drugs, just in a way that it doesn't destroy myself. I just think kind of the education towards drugs can be improved. The how do you say that? Like, voorlichting, which means that you just educate people about it. I think if my kids eventually, like, I don't have kids, but I want my kids to grow up in a space where they are not restricted, that is kind of tolerant towards it, But if you come into a situation where you don't know how to handle it, there is help. There is kind of the right examples to make you know how to deal with it, how to take care, and balance those kind of experiences. Because sometimes, you know, people get so excited about like a festival, and then it gets, you know, you just keep continue that in your life. And I think that's really scary when you have drugs also in your workplace. And I think that's something that I think the party should host, that moment where you can. So hopefully, there, I just think balance is important.
I want to talk about it from a product development space. I've worked directly, stroke indirectly with like alcohol brands, and I know for sure that like a lot of this big company, this big distilleries, this big alcohol brands are trying to figure out a way to move away from just like for the longest time, the alcohol brands have been the ones that have brought in the money. But then there is like this whole movement, because in business, we're thinking about supply and demand, and there's like an increasing demand in alternative drinks, separate from soda or juice or water. And therefore, like in our market, like in Kenya, it's still very early stages again with like mostly everything else. But in other markets, it's becoming more established to find like 0% gin or 0% IPAs, things like that. And yeah, it goes back to the needs of the market, where when I think about it, my perception of it is we grew up in a world where I feel like we live in the information era, where you can't be living in 2021 and see that you don't have information about what's happening literally around you. So because of that, we are major millennials, the Gen Zs, we are highly aware of our world and the history and the things that have happened. And one of the things that a lot of us know is that, yeah, drugs can be fun. And to anyone who's using them, like, go ahead, like, have your fun. But then, like, another bigger thing that's also coming up is moderation is key. Like, don't just, there are all of these guidelines. Like, I found a website a while back. I was considering using, oh my God, I was considering using MDMA. And like, I found a website that was telling me, like, this is how you use it. This is what you need to know. This is what you like. This is how you prepare yourself. Still haven't found the MDMA. Still working on it. And I also like, please don't come and arrest me. But the thing is, like, there is information out there that is like breaking it down, because people are coming from a more self-aware, you know, like state of being and state of mind, where you're not just blindly walking into things. Like what my mom used to tell me when I was growing up would be like, in Kiswahili, like unafuata tu kila mtu, which is, are you just going to go and follow everyone with whatever it is that they're doing? And the thing is, like, her thing was always know what you're doing. And I kind of feel like our generation took that to heart. And yeah, I feel like that answers.
I think I like how Lucinda said it's not about either or. Like it's not about either or. Like, do you have a sober? You can have, there's room for both. There's always room for both. And I like that Ivy has talks about guidance, like in terms of like what can we do instead of saying you must not take drugs, you should not take drugs. That's a personal choice and a personal because I know I've not I don't drink ever. So when I say that, people are like, what? How do you go out? I just go. Like I go. So and I know like in China when I was working there, I lost a lot of jobs because I don't drink. Because yeah, I was saying I like the idea that it's not an either or kind of situation. And we are back. We are back-ish. It's not a yeah. So I'm having strange internet things, but it's fine. I think we should move on to COVID things. I like that it's not either or, and I like that the idea of having education around these things, around chemical and natural enhancers, and that it's a personal choice as well, and that we all seem to agree like that. Lucinda, go.
Also, this is kind of I don't know, an idea, and I was thinking about it, but I was also thinking of if we understand what these chemicals do, or how, what is actually what we want from them, maybe we can create, an experience. That's why I think immersive experience are already kind of can have that, because you get a lot of input also by art, or by just a different way of going through a space that can give you like an kind of an Alice in Wonderland kind of feel, or like if it in a creative way we can stimulate those experiences where people feel creative, or I don't know, whatever they want from the drugs. I just feel like that's also something that I'm interested in kind of researching, like what stimuli, how does it how without drugs can you have that same kind of feel or inspiration or whatever. Yeah.
So I think we're gonna run slightly over time, just slightly.
Yeah.
I hope that's okay. If that's okay, then Ivy, you can add on to that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't mind running over time. This is becoming like even like a more and more exciting conversation. And based on what Lucinda just said, I honestly can't remember the name of the party. I'll try and look it up. But I do know that there are international festivals that are creating room where like the previous reaction or like planning of these parties was, we're just going to assume that people don't take these drugs. And now they are making room where it's like, okay, this is if you feel like you're getting a bad trip and you just need a space to just sit down and get some air, there's something like that for you. And I feel like that should be the future of partying. And just to add, that in the same way that when you go and buy your medication and you're told take 2 times 3 for 5 days and you will get this result, I feel like it should be the same way for drugs. Where if we do understand, okay, so why am I taking alcohol? It makes me happy. Why am I taking weed? It just makes me sit and relax and be in my feelings. Why am I taking MDMA? Because I want to just like explore and the Alice in Wonderland feeling. Like that's what I'm looking for. And we shouldn't, I feel like we should, maybe the future is, first of all, get rid of shaming people who want to use these drugs, because they are there, and our curiosities will always lead to something, and therefore we can't continue in the same way where we're like, no, 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 no. It's again the either or conversation would be really beneficial.
Good. I like that we're circling back to care, even with what you said, like care. So self-care, learning what this is about, community care, festivals giving you room and space to just trip or come down from a trip or whatever. So, and I think these are very, very important principles that we must not forget, even when we organize and even when we go to parties and stuff like that, like it's about the people and it's about how people experience this, and it's about care and it's about love and it's about feeling and all those things. And then that brings me to COVID again and how it shifted. Like it shifted for most of us, I think. I don't know, Ivy, what your experience has been, but I will speak for myself as a DJ, having to go online and having to play for an assumed audience, you know, does things to your head, you know, because you're used to, because I think DJing is such a call and what do you call it? Response kind of thing, whether they speak to you or not, there's just that vibe that comes. And now we've gone online, right? So want to explore what are the opportunities, the challenges, the learnings, what has changed. Pussy Party, for example.
So for Pussy Party, something that was so interesting was, especially during our hard lockdown, you know, at the beginning of things, March 2020 until maybe like June or August, all of a sudden things were a lot more global. Festivals that would never normally look to book Pussy Party DJs were calling us for sets because it was that much easier for us to participate. And I think that kind of, even now as we shift into more real life events, and especially as we'll call them the global north, as they get back into being safer, partying, exchanging amongst each other, we are still excluded, but the awareness of what's happening in the rest of the world hasn't necessarily shifted out. So I'm hoping that we can maintain that, and that, you know, 2022, August 2022, Pussy Party wants to be doing the European festival circuit the same way we did online in 2020, you know? Yeah, I think that's been a positive upshot for us, and we weren't expecting it. You know, even Strictly Silk kind of started to hear rumblings, but it was when you started to do Strictly Silk at home that I really started to engage and felt like I could be included.
You were asking about my experience as a Kenyan. I feel like my perspective is always from like the party goers. I've never organized a party. So there's two things. There's the fact that I had access to things that I never had access to before, which was like concerts that I normally, because they exist solely for, you know, when they say world tours, they just mean the global north. And then the rest of us, you know, was left to like deal with our feelings or just like deal with YouTube. So it was it was very exciting. It was honestly very exciting to attend album launches, to be like the Versus concerts were amazing. To have like more and more artists had, like, I even subscribed to some of their newsletters because you could get access to parties that you wouldn't normally get access to. And that was also something that happened in this country, where our party scene is very Nairobi centric, and there's also the coast, and there's a lot that's usually happening there. And then we also have Kisumu, and then there's also a lot usually happening there. But a lot of it is very Nairobi heavy. And therefore, if you don't live in Nairobi, then you're left out of like a lot of things. And for once, we saw the Sauti Sol album launch, and that was amazing to watch. We had access to DJs who we just usually hear about. So that's the one side. On this other side, it got tiring after some time. Like at some point, it just felt like I was getting so many things. I just needed, okay, let me just let's go back to the intentionality thing. Like I know I want to be at every Instagram live session. I want to be at every, I don't know, artist thingy that's happening, every DJ thing that's happening, every party that's happening. But for my own mental health, it just got too tiring and I had to like take a step back. And I feel like that kind of just relates to what you're saying, like with the DJ thing, where you need the audience to kind of give you something. Like even us as the audience, it gets to a point where like, hey, even like too much of a good thing can just be.
Lucinda, do you have anything on this part?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what she just said, and I feel like that the solutions that we found that were very creative and I could enjoy at some point, they just never cover for what a physical event can host, you know. And when energies really come together in space, I think that's something that digitally I didn't experience, even if it was like for parties that went on Zoom and you could, you know, all have your cam on and be screened behind the DJ, and like they all find this kind of idea of being together, but just not having the energy around me really still made me feel kind of lonely at some points, or kind of like when the internet is stuck, you know, it's really like, it's like when the lights go on in the middle of a party, like it's really, you get in and out. It's, for me, it just at some point it didn't work. I am very curious what they will do in like metaverse, and what's like this whole the digital scene is developing even more with all this information in creating VR experiences and like different ways of having you enjoy that digital space. But I don't think it can ever cover really what we do in real life together. So yeah,
I agree as well. And I think for me, what I learned the most is how to adapt, and that we adapt really quickly.
Yeah.
As a human race, because I think every one of us, as Ivy said, went online, like Instagram live, bam, bam, bam. And then Instagram started muting us. And yeah,
yes.
You don't have licenses. And then now you're like, what? Playing experience, this has never been an issue. And now you have to think beyond the music that will be muted on YouTube or Instagram. Yeah. And so I think there was a lot of new artist discoveries, new space discoveries. For example, gamers knew about Twitch. I did not know about Twitch until COVID happened. And then you're like, oh, there's this beautiful platform that has been existing throughout this time. And we're only getting to know about it now. And I think the opportunities definitely were open, but then also many opportunities were closed at the same time. And I think the only thing for me that really helped, that really stood out for me is like the availability of so much information, so much more information than I thought was possible. And as Ivy said, it was now here. You can touch it, you can feel it. John Legend on his piano. And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. Let's go.
In his living room.
Chris Martin. It is, I'm like, whoa, I'm going to everything. I'm waking up at 3 a.m. for verses. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm watching Kasango make beats on this, and I'm like, yes. But then also, I did notice when the audience disconnected, because then whereas you would have 100 people, soon you had 30, and soon you had 2, and then then you're like, okay, this has to end somehow. And so also that brings me to the last question, I think, about how people party and how, as women especially, a lot of women, I don't know if anyone of us have childcare as part of their lives, but I know that we may serve people who do. And there's some people who just, regardless of whether they're parents or not, struggle to attend night events. I'm speaking about myself. What are the options for them to still attend entertainment events, because I think those are the highest numbers of people who don't like to go out were always attending our our online events. And so now that things are seemingly changing, or we've decided that we've finished this pandemic by fire, by force, what are the ways we can include these people?
I think one thing that I experienced during this lockdown was also like not having a nightlife, but the parties got curated like from 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, which gave me that feeling of like this kind of group that has no place to go, like in those evening hours. I feel like a lot can happen, and you can kind of find a way to maybe include, I don't know in what way we're talking about children, but I just think like there should be parties where, like a festival, like festivals are already like not so much about the age, like there is kids on festivals, but like have that in a party setting, maybe a sober party where that is more like a natural feel of not going at it alone, but maybe taking your children or having a more of a environment where that is possible. And otherwise just having early hours of partying, I think that's great, so you have a good night of sleep, the next day is not ruined or you feel exhausted. So I vote for evening parties.
I'm a big proponent for day parties. Like, I think there's a club in Nairobi called Muse that one did at 4 a.m. because our curfew ended at 4 a.m. It was like the party started at 4 a.m. and went to, I think, 2 p.m. And I was like, this is the best party for me because I'm a morning person, So like by 5 I'll be there. I'm like, yes, let's go. And then have the afternoon to do other things and the night to sleep. So I think I'm one of those people who went like, when the curfew was lifted, because I had found a space that I was very comfortable in, like you go in, you start playing your set at 2 p.m. or the first DJ starts at 2, then we go 3, 4, 5, and by 9 you're out, you're in your house. And I felt like that was the best thing that ever happened. However, I am aware that most people don't operate like this. And so, and because it's seemingly they are the majority, we are back to that. I don't know if you had anything to say about creation of these day spaces, Coco.
So I mean, a pussy party crash is something that we've spoken about again and again and again. We were doing pussy party usually on a Wednesday night. And a lot of mothers and single mothers and new mothers wanted to attend. We never quite got around there. I'm not a person who has experience with kids, so I'm not the person to spearhead that. But I wonder what, we were talking about community, and sometimes there's a perception that we start these kind of events for a community. I think with Pussy Party, we found more that the community has formed around the space. And so I think, communities of women who are brought together over things which are different than just your immediate location, communities which are being created, which are more to do with our hopes and dreams and aspirations and ways of thinking. And I'm very interested to see what continues to happen as these communities become stronger, as we learn more about how to trust each other, how to show up for each other, how we are able to intersect in each other's lives, not just on the dance floor. And, Queertopia, I'm just going to mention it again because it was such a great meeting. On the Friday night, they called it House of the Spirit. And there were these incredible live performances. We were sitting down, we were talking. It was a very different kind of space than a usual party space. There were people coming in, there were parents coming in on the Friday night. There were adult children coming in on the Friday night, by which I mean the over 18 children of some of our queer elders. And it just pointed more and more to what we're creating, and the potential, the new communities, new connections. Very interested to see where that goes. I think there's also, my generation are now having young kids and raising their children very differently. And I think that these children have a place in our community, a very important place in our community. Right now they're 1, 2, 3, 4 years old. We're not going to bring them out for the whole night, but I'm interested to see what happens, and as we understand parties in different ways, we also understand more about cross-generational experiences. Having our elders in the space with us was so important and so empowering, and I wonder what happens when we're able to hold space for youth.
We're here for the pussy party crash. You will give jobs to all those people on YouTube who've made Baby Shark into R&B. so the parents are like, yeah, and the kids are like, yeah. Because I always wonder who listens to this Baby Shark. Anyway, y'all need to check it out. If you've not checked out Baby Shark R&B,
drop the link in the chat.
We'll find it and drop it. So as we come to a close, I think if anyone has anything just to, as we've been speaking about drugs and other things, just one for the road, something that someone can see. So an audience can take away from this whole conversation. Can go whichever way it goes as I look for Baby Shark.
I would say just it's something that I got reminded by you, is that this is a good time to reimagine how we want to see the party. And I feel like that is a space that during this pandemic, there is so much space to kind of rethink and recreate this. So I would just keep in that. I wanna take that with me also from this conversation again, and just keep imagining and asking okay, what do I value about parties? What do I need as a person? How can I share this with others? And just also do it, write it down, speak to people, go to the place and see if they're open for these alternatives. Because I think at this point also clubs and bars, they need these ideas to also come back from this pandemic. They've been hit so hard. So I think every initiative, every hour that we can fill in the day, they want to run it. I think that's something that we can all think on, continue. Yeah,
I agree. To me, partying throughout the time that we've been talking about this, preparing for it, the thing that has come really strongly for me is parties are another reason or another way for us to find communities or form communities. And I don't think there's any my definition of a party, I am fully behind the idea that it doesn't just need to be a club. It doesn't need to be a festival or there's a DJ who's doing something. It is a coming together of people to do something. And therefore, for people who are building this or coming up, conceptualizing, putting in the work, it's the time, just these are communities that you're building, and there is no one way of thinking about a community, and trust that the idea that you have, you're not the only one who has thought about it. Ray said this at the beginning of our conversation. Like, your idea is not unique. And I feel like if you start thinking like that, it opens up this world of possibility for you to go out there, trusting that if you do the thing, there will be people who will show up. Because the kind of thing that I am looking for, Sahizi, it doesn't exist, or okay, it's slowly beginning to exist in the country, but it hasn't stopped me from, like, from my eye wandering to kind of try and find out, okay, what's happening in Joburg. Like, I was following the Queertopia party online. I've followed so many other parties online because they feel like something that I relate to. And therefore, if there's someone like me in this country who has an idea, concept, just announce it, do your marketing, and trust, like, people like me will show up.
Yeah, also just, I think there's a lot of shared ground in terms of how we're thinking about coming together. And I think that's been really beautiful to hear. And I think that there's more and more shared ground and shared imagination. And I love what you're saying, Ivy. If you put it out there, you'd be surprised who else will say, I've been thinking the same thing. I've had the same needs. I've had the same problems. And I think we're coming into a beautiful time in terms of having had this break from being together in real life, having had different experiences and ways of thinking. Some people didn't do the shadow work. Some people are coming out here with their shadows screaming at us. But so many of us have used this time to reset and reimagine. I'm excited to see what happens.
That's brilliant. And I think for me, it still goes back to the idea of care, the idea of community. And with care, it's just self-care and also community care, and how important that is, even when partying. And also the knowledge that the alternative and intentionally curated spaces have the potential to seep out into the mainstream and make partying all over such a wonderful experience for all of us, where we can express without shame who we are and what we like to do and what we are doing. So yeah, I think that's it from me anyway. That is recorded. May you stop recording?
Thank you, Ms. Ray.